No, you can sit wherever you want to
I'll
sit.
sit right next to Wesley.
All right, sounds good.
Perfect. Jackie, I was telling Wesley when you came in, just general format,
Yeah.
people do introductions of
Yeah.
themselves and whatnot before, well, I'm gonna obviously do an introduction, kind of like set out the ground rules, what
Okay.
you see, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna ask you to introduce yourself. How are you? What are the first questions I'm gonna ask you?
So now, so I don't need to do it in the.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's,
great.
I think probably like the best first question is
Sure.
to go through it. And this way you can say whatever you feel you need to say.
Sure.
Introduction.
Sure.
This is being live streamed by GNAT,
Okay.
which is why the microphone was like, it's turned off right now. Which is why the microphone was right in front of you.
Okay.
Because you wanna make sure that you're speaking into it so that it's,
Okay.
yeah. Even if
Could we
everybody in
take
the
this
room-
thing out of the stand? Or
If
should
you
we
want
just-
to.
Okay.
It may make a little bit of weird noise because it's gonna be on
I'll
at
just
like
move
a
it up
level.
here.
Yeah, I mean, and you really need to kind of talk into the top of it, not the side.
Okay.
But yeah, just bearing in mind that, you know.
Okay.
Project your voice.
Yes.
We can do that.
That's easy. That's no big deal.
I'll use my teacher voice.
That's right. Sit down.
Nothing new.
What's new with you, Jackie?
Oh, not much, you know. I keep busy.
Yep.
I've been retired for 6 years, so
Yeah, that's awesome.
I know, it is kind of awesome. You know, for the first 4, I did some consulting, and then it
Okay.
just started to turn into this whole other life of work again.
Yeah.
And I said, I
You
don't
don't
want
want
to
to
do
do that.
this.
No way.
You know?
Right, exactly.
So I
That's why you
stopped.
retired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were you guys traveling somewhere? Did you go?
We were in Florida vacation week with John
Okay.
and Amy and his kids.
Oh, sweet. Awesome.
And that was really nice.
Yeah, it was a
And-
long winter up here.
I know it
The
was.
winter in the Cape was insane.
Yeah, I was terrible.
Oh my God. My
was
folks were,
terrible.
I think they had just left. They were gone somewhere. I think I got the call that the power had gone out at their house in Pocasset, like over by Falmouth,
Yeah.
kind of. And it was out for like 4 days or something. And 3 feet of snow down there.
It was, my sister had to, the same thing happened to my sister. She lives right by Nauset Beach.
Okay,
And
yep.
everything was wiped out.
That's crazy.
Everything was wiped out, and she had to move she rents an apartment, and the main house, I let her go into that because they had a generator, but then the generator died. So
Oh,
she's just like sleeping, like she's trying to go out during the day to get warm in the
Yeah.
car, and then she's just bundled
Totally.
up at
I'm like,
night.
hoping to God that
Because
nothing
nobody had
freezes.
any power.
I know, for days. They
It was
sent,
bad,
they were
you
sending
know?
Vermont trans, like plow trucks up down there from
Wow.
here.
Wow,
Yeah.
yeah. it
My
was-
folks just went, they went to the Bahamas or something, but they stayed at the Cape when they came back for a night.
Yeah.
And they sent me some pictures of the beach. There's like a tiny beach down there,
Yeah,
just totally transformed.
I know.
Like,
That's the sad part, is that so much has been wiped out.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Especially in that whole Sandwich area, because we used to
Oh, yeah.
stay down in there too.
Yep.
And it's just, I mean, the houses are like right on
I
the cliffs,
know.
you
It's-
know?
yeah.
And they spent all this money, I think it was last year, they spent tons of money, like
They
trying to
built
shore
up
it up.
a-
and
yeah.
It's gone,
I mean, after that
Yeah.
crazy storm,
yeah.
yeah, I know it's wild.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Ann.
I was so surprised to see you. I never saw the list until it was in the paper.
Well, they did spell my name with a D, standard. Which I thought was Yep. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Good. Doing good.
Is it all good? Are you interested in this?
That's why I'm here. I hope so.
No, we just
Yeah.
had nothing else to do
You're the
today.
second person to say that to me.
Well, I don't know, I like that, Okay, if I take half of you and half of you, see you in there,
Right.
then I'm good. But this kind of makes, put a little, but good luck to all of you.
Thank you,
Okay,
Ann.
thanks, Dan. Hi,
Hey,
Mike.
Carol. Hey, Tony.
How are you?
Good, and
Good.
you?
Good. It's nice to see you.
Hey, Mike. How's it going?
Good.
So Paige gave us the download. She said at first she wants us to do like a minute and a half, just to tell about ourselves. But the first question she's going to ask us is why we're running, so we don't need to include that
Okay.
in our intro.
That was a good heads
And the
up.
mic is always live, 'Cause
It's actually muted right now.
Oh.
Everything is turned off. I will control it from here, so even though I turned it on, it's turned muted.
So, okay, but it will always be on as soon as we're live. Gotcha.
That is the intention.
Okay.
Unless you're like, I prefer you turn me off when I'm not But I can do that. I can do that. It just makes my brain a little bit more.
Have to work a little harder, huh?
Higher, yeah.
Is there a spot for Mr. Kilburn up here too? I
No,
saw him on the
No.
agenda.
No, it's
He's
not.
gonna come up and take my spot for a moment.
Oh, okay. Okay. And who are we? Oh, Sean, I don't know Sean.
I don't know Sean either. No, nope.
I know
think he must
people
work with-
that know of him.
He must work with Eric Martins or something, right? 'Cause he's assistant DA for Bennington County.
Introduce himself, give a little bit of an introduction, and then I'll have each one of the candidates introduce themselves. Just, who you are, whatever. But the first
That's kind of what
question
I
that I'm gonna ask everybody is why are you running?
And it's also,
We
bro,
have a revolt.
fair, and also it's like 6 to 8 on Thursday night.
I know.
I don't know. It
It's not
doesn't,
my best time. I go to bed early.
you know,
You know?
it's just like,
Hey there. How are you? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
I hardly recognize you up here.
How come?
I don't know.
Well, the picture that they had for this and the picture that was in the paper, I didn't give them a picture. They just took an old file photo
from MEMS or
from-
something,
from
from the
MEMS.
PRSU, yeah.
So it was like 15 years old. I'm like, really?
You still look great, stop.
That's the way I remember you.
That's like when people die and they put a picture of them when they were
No,
young. I'm like,
stop.
"Who's that?"
You look great, be quiet.
Yeah, what else?
Everybody has a 2-minute limit.
Is that your
We got 3 hours, two hours, right?
That's crazy too.
That's what I was asking Paige, like, so
Did
is this
she
really gonna go to,
Did she say that?
well, she goes, by the time it's over, maybe be prepared for more people to ask even more questions. Because, I mean, there's only, what do we got here now? Maybe 30 people? Like, I don't know. I would assume at a certain point, there will be no more questions. We could stay all day, I guess. I don't really know.
I usually run, the last month I've been with my granddaughter in Montpelier because Tazzy, the 8th grader, is legislative page.
Sweet.
So I've been
She's an
hanging
8,
out.
like she's
Yeah,
one
it's
of their
like
page
she's-
or whatever?
They have 7 pages.
Yeah.
They split it up in 3 sections over
Yep.
the session, and they each get 6 weeks. So she and 6 other kids.
Do they stay up there?
Yeah. So I've been staying up, so I got an Airbnb and I've been staying up there with her.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she loves it. She's had a lot of fun. She meets everybody. They even
It is
have
cool, like-
they have to study. Like she had
Oh, yeah.
tests on who's who.
Totally, yeah.
So she
Well, and probably basic,
pictures
like,
and, yeah.
political jargon and stuff,
Yeah.
you would just have to
Oh yeah,
get,
they had to
you
follow
know.
2 bills and write essays on that. So they
That's
make them
awesome.
work. So
And
it's
she's
been
an 8th
fun.
grade, and she goes to MEMS, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Should
it
get
is a
Ernie to
thing.
do that next year.
Yeah, you have to get permission from your principal has to write a letter that
Okay.
you can handle working independently.
Well, that is a lot for a 13 or
is.
14-year-old, honestly, especially these days.
Because she goes to school on Mondays, and then that's it for the week.
She goes to school here on
She
Monday.
goes to school here on
Got it.
Mondays.
So do
and
you
then-
shuttle her back and forth up there?
Yeah, we come home on Fridays and go back up
Yeah.
either Monday
That's
night or
awesome.
Tuesday morning.
That's super cool.
But anyways, that's my long way of saying I go to the gym and I see your mom there a lot, but I haven't been there. And then she wasn't there last week when I was
They have like new owners over there now, right?
Well, I don't know because I've only been going since like November, but it's
I heard that they
Dana's.
stay open 24 hours a day now, so you can go in there. Like,
Yeah, you can go
that's kind of
anytime.
nice. Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Well, I was going to the Prospect Rehabilitation, like the PT place with John, whatever his name is.
Yes, John DeBlasio.
Yeah, he's great. But I guess they're shut down.
They're shut down?
Or they're shutting down. Yeah.
How
Carol was telling me this the other day. I don't know if he wasn't making enough money or.
I don't know.
That's kind of what I thought because.
I thought everybody went to them for PT.
I mean, that was like one of two in town, really.
Yeah.
And they had a great. I mean, the guy that I saw is awesome. You know.
Oh my God, yeah, because I had to go there after I fractured my knee and stuff.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think. I think
That's
they're still open
surprising.
right now, but they're kind of in the midst of not being open anymore. Which, yeah, it's a.
He's had some health problems himself.
Oh, really?
Oh, so
That
that's why
stinks.
he's not going to do it anymore. Because there aren't really any more. I don't know if,
Was it
what's
Kathy
the Kathy
Metzger?
Metzger.
Yeah.
I don't know if Kathy still does it. Does she?
Hey, she was doing my dad, but I think she was kind of getting towards the end of getting towards retirement or something else.
There's the guy up in the village where Humane used to be.
Okay. Yep.
It's called, I can't think of the name of it.
Yeah, there was like another one by the post office. I feel like too, or something. Yeah, there's a lot of people that need PT right there. Though, I'll tell you that much.
So that whole crew that was, because he had a few people working for him there. Nate was the one I went to. He
Nate's
was
awesome.
awesome.
One of the nicest dudes ever.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Wow, well, he won't have trouble finding work. by the
No,
time he stinks for
that's
him.
what I was thinking. It's like, I mean, that might be an opportunity to start your own thing.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it does seem weird. It would maybe make more sense if John was having some health problems
Yeah, it would.
because
Yeah.
the amount of people I would see in there that were, I think all like my parents' age, like every person
Oh,
from town.
everybody. When I went in
haven't
there, it's
seen
like,
any
oh
of
my
these
God, here's
people.
all these people. I haven't seen them in forever.
Oh, I
They're all
know.
there.
This is
Yeah,
where everybody meets. Is at the PT center.
it's true.
course.
And I looked at, and you look at the wall of who's signing. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, I know.
that
I
person, know that
literally,
person.
I think Nate was like massaging my back at one point, and he had his little list on his computer screen. And I was like, Nate, I know every single person. There's like 30 people, and I know every one of them. It's pretty weird.
You must be Sean.
Hi, Sean. My name's Wes. Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you.
How's Josh doing these days?
He's good. I mean, he's on the Cape. He's been
Okay,
there.
he moved back there.
Yeah.
I saw him when the last time he was here. I think.
So Paige will
3 years
probably
ago.
tell you.
Still doing the same thing.
Whatever.
Yeah.
She
seemed good
snagged
last
me
time I
out
saw
there.
him.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
He
appreciate
just,
that.
it was getting to him. I think he was here and he's up on the mountain.
Yeah, he was going a little crazy. Well, he was just. It's like it's hard to meet somebody.
I know,
You know?
it is. And he just, he has more connections down there.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm glad he's happy. I saw him maybe 2 summers ago fishing. Right after I got to the hospital, I saw him in my park and somebody pushed me down to the river.
Yeah, he's good.
So for your microphones, you do need to be able to be kind of closer to them. That's why I pushed the beach to the table. You don't need to be right up on it, but you do want to speak into the front of it because it won't pick up the sound as well from the side. So if you turn your head to the side, for example, it doesn't pick up as well.
Okay.
And while I don't think anybody in this room will have a hard time hearing you, this is being live streamed, which is why we want to be able to make sure that the sound is good.
Great.
Paige, do you anticipate a full 2 hours?
I kind of do,
Okay.
because figure, with introductions, and then I had a whole bunch of questions that people had submitted online. Give everyone the opportunity to address some of those questions.
Okay.
I didn't even get a chance to write in for today's talk all the questions that people had asked.
All right.
I'm going to open it up to the floor towards the end, and then for the next time we meet on the 21st, it'll be a whole different set of questions. Are we all good?
Good. I think so.
Oh,
Oh, it's nasty.
Vermont, that's why people are.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. Ooh. So the microphones are a little bit loud for this space, but that's because GNAT-TV has agreed to live stream this event to make it accessible to more individuals. So that's the reasoning on that one. So I was going to say good morning, but good afternoon, and welcome to the Manchester Community Library's Meet the Candidates Forum. If you don't know me already, my name is Paige. I'm the assistant director here, and I'm very pleased that all 4 candidates were so agreeable to come in on very short notice. When I say very short notice, I believe I called you guys on Tuesday and was like, hey, can you be here Saturday? And everybody was very able to work their schedules around. So this is the first of 2 events of this type. The second one is going to be held on Thursday, May 21st from 6 to 8 p.m. So I'd like to start by saying thank you again to the candidates who made time in their schedules to be here, and also thank you to GNAT for live streaming the event and making it accessible to people who cannot attend in person. So I just want to give kind of a rundown of the format before we begin. I'm going to start with having the opportunity for candidates to give brief introductions. First, we're going to have Doug Kilburn come up, who is offering up his time unopposed for the trustee of public funds, but he's going to introduce himself and hopefully maybe explain the position to some of us who may not be as knowledgeable. Next, each select board candidate will be given 2 minutes to introduce themselves generally and to the community. After that, I'm going to move on to community submitted questions. We're going to give approximately 1 hour for that. Each candidate is going to be given the opportunity to address questions that were submitted by the public via the library form. Also, please limit your answers to maybe about 2 minutes. Doug is going to be our timekeeper as well. Just because we have so many questions, I want to try and get through as many of them as possible. After that, I will open up the floor for questions that anybody present has that they would like to ask. Doug is going to come around with a microphone. My previous statement about GNAT live streaming this means that please do not ask questions if you're not speaking into the microphone. Otherwise, whoever is watching online is not going to be able to hear the question, obviously making the answer seem a little bit, unsupported. So, if you are addressing a question to a specific candidate, fantastic. There's no reason why you cannot do that. However, I will also offer it up to any other candidate who is interested in trying to address the question that was asked. If you want to address questions to all the candidates, that's also fine. The event is going to come to a close at 3 p.m., but we will convene with different questions on May 21st. So before I start moving into the questions, I just want to talk a little bit about the rules of engagement, shall we call it? And that first rule is my primary rule, which is be respectful. So candidates, this is a forum to introduce yourselves to the community and to let them know your perspectives and viewpoints. This is not a debate. It's a discussion. It's not a debate. It's also not a place to challenge individuals running against you, right? So this is for you to make yourself stand out based on who you are, not based on what somebody else has done or said in the past. So if you do devolve into what we'll call attack politics, I have a mute button, and I'm not afraid to use it, right? So please make sure that you are being respectful. To the audience and the community, same thing. These individuals here are offering their time and energy for the betterment of the community. Please remember that it's a hard job, and it is not a requirement for anyone to be here. They are all voluntarily here in order to be able to address the public. We are looking for candidates to let us know where they are and where they stand. We are not seeking gotcha moments, all right? So please be respectful, the one rule that I do have. All right, with that, let me move over and have Doug Kilburn introduce himself.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Kilburn, and I'm running for 1 year of an unexpired 3-year term for trustee of public funds. This wording is about a trustee of public funds function, and it is taken from the town website. Trustees of public funds manage real or personal property held by the town in trust for any purpose. Trustees also serve as ex officio members of the Investment Advisory Committee. The Investment Advisory Committee advises the Select Board on the town's financial investments. About me, I was born in Manchester, and after my time in the Army, I returned back here and have been a continuous resident of Manchester for over 50 years. My wife Cynthia and I retired from ownership of Doug's Auto Parts, which we owned for 34 years, and Kilburn's Convenience Store for 33 years. We retired in January of 21. Starting in the summer of 22, at the previous town manager's request, I started helping in the town office on a part-time basis with special projects, as well as intermittently helping the assessor's office and the zoning department. I served 3 two-year terms on the select board from 91 to 97, served as the chair of the cemetery commission from 97 until 2008. I've been one of the 3 members of the town water board since 1994. I care deeply about this town, and I hope that you will vote for me on June 2nd for trustee of public funds. Thank you for your interest in town government. I'll be around after the program is over and attempt to answer any questions that you might have for my relatively lowly position as opposed to what these folks are attempting to do. Thank you.
All right, so Doug has agreed to be the timekeeper for this, the next hour and a half, more or less. So I think maybe we'll just start here on the left and work our way down. If maybe give about 2 minutes, just a brief introduction, who you are and what your background is.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming today. My name is Wes Stannard. I was born in Rutland, Vermont in 1981 and spent most of my childhood right here in Manchester. I went to Northshire Day School and then to MEMS, and then graduated from Burton in 1999. I left Manchester in 2000, went to school in Boston, and then was in New York City. Came back here in 2012 with my wife, who was pregnant at the time, and we've been here ever since. So it's just nice to be back in this town after all those years. I would say Manchester has changed quite a bit even since then, mostly for the best, I think. I do think that the current town select board has done a great job in many ways, but there's always work to be done. And I think that the main reason that I'm here is just to create more engagement for this community and these types of things. That's one thing I see coming back here after all these years, is that it's not quite the same in terms of people showing up for these types of events and just being involved in the town community and the town government and all the issues that we have. And if all we can do from this event is to get more people to show up, I think that's a win for everybody. So, thanks.
Hi, my name is Jackie Wilson, and I moved here about 40 years ago. I was a young 29-year-old, and I had 3 little boys in tow. My husband at the time had taken the job as the town manager for Manchester. I will tell you, when I arrived here, I was a 3rd-generation Cape Codder, left 5 siblings. There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't know somebody I met on the street on the Cape. So when we came here, I said, okay. After the first week, I was just climbing the walls, and I said, Jeff, 2 years, and I'm out of here. 2 years, that's it. So you can see what happened. My children got very involved in school. Thankfully, I needed something to do. I had left college to marry Jeff, so I didn't have a degree yet. And I got a job at the Quality Restaurant. So some of you in here, if you've been around for a while, I see Steve Nichols laughing. I got a job at the Quality Restaurant, and I worked there for 7 years as a waitress. And I will say, I got to know all the locals. I either waited on them or I worked with them. And it was a great introduction for me, and it started to ground me. I was like, wow, this is a good community, and I enjoy these people, and I learned a lot. So and I was still, I'm a person that has to keep busy. So I got a call, I think it was at a Christmas party, and Dick Leadham said to me, some of you may remember Dick Leadham. He was then the principal at MEMS. He said, I need a paraeducator at the school. Would you come to work after Christmas and just do it for 6 months? And I said, all right, I'll do it. So I went and did that, and I fell in love with it. I mean, I had not anticipated that I was going to get involved in education, but then I did. So I went back to Castleton State College. I got my degree, and kind of, I guess, the rest is history. I was then hired at MEMS and was a teacher, assistant principal, principal, then became a superintendent. So that was my career. I'm now retired. My time is up. Doug is like looking at me.
First, I want to thank everyone who came out today. That's very encouraging to see so many people interested in the election, which is not the normal course of events to have an election this time of year. I had the good fortune of being born here, and with the exception of my time in college, which was too long, and my time in the Army, which was definitely too long, I've been a resident here ever since. I practiced law for 30-some years after clerking for the law. I did not go to law school. I apprenticed with other lawyers. And shortly after I got back from Vietnam, I ran for the legislature. I was a little disgusted with the political system as a whole and how I had seen it respond to the war or not respond to the war. And so I ran for representative here, and much to my own surprise, I got elected in 1975. Or 74, I was elected, started serving in 75. I did that for 3 years, 3 terms rather, 6 years. And then stepped down and practiced law after that. I did some time in a small firm and more time, I guess, on my own practicing law. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Dillon, and I guess I'm the newcomer in town compared to the other 3. I grew up in Vermont, and I've been working my way down from the north, I guess. As a child, I grew up in Burlington, delivered the Burlington Free Press to Madeline Kunin, among others, on my paper route. By the time it was middle school, we were in Mendon. I went to Mount St. Joseph Academy, graduated from there, used to come down here and compete against BBA folks. And then I left for New York City and swore I'd never come back. I bet you never heard that before. And had a career down in the city for quite some time. I have a law degree and was at some major financial firms for quite a while, and continued to vacation here in Vermont, was looking for a home, and ultimately made the decision, what better place to raise children than to come back to Vermont, and what better place than here. And so this is where I've been since 2017 or 18, roughly. And it's been great being back, bumping into people, some who recognize me, some who don't, hair, and reconnecting with folks and really rolling up the sleeves and getting involved in the community. And it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made. And happy to be here and happy to answer your questions over the next few hours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mike, if you could actually move your microphone a little closer. I'm getting input from the great beyond that's telling me that your mic is a little low. So thank you. All right, the first question I'm going to have, actually, I think, Sean, if you don't mind, we'll start with you on this end. Maybe we'll kind of switch things up a little bit. The first question I have is, why are you running? Why did you decide that this was something that you wanted to do? And then we can take it down the line with candidates.
So I'm running because someone called me and asked if I would consider putting my hat in the ring for Greg's seat when he stepped down. Prior to that, it wasn't on my radar. I enjoy paying attention. I'm plugged in. And it got me thinking. And I thought about my background. I'm a licensed realtor. I'm a licensed attorney in 2 states. I currently work for the state of Vermont. I'm a public servant. So I talk to people from out of town looking for second homes. I talk to people who live here and have primary homes. I deal with statutes every day. I've worked in big places and small places and dealt with all sorts of conflict. I was a varsity athlete through college. Being a part of a team is really important to me. The select board is one of 5. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I think I've got the right skill set for this, and I think I've got the right temperament. I don't have a long-standing issue with anyone or anything here. And I think that's important, and I think that I have ideas and experience and perspective and just the right mix of being here long enough, but maybe not too long, where I will never say to you, well, that's the way we've always done it. I've heard that a lot, and I think people should always challenge the way things are done in a respectful way and ask questions, and that's what I do, and that's what I want to do as a member of the select board.
Thank you. Mike?
I think it's pretty obvious why I'm running. I ran.
Can you lean into the microphone a little bit more?
I ran for this same seat a year ago, and I lost by 2 votes. And so when there was a vacancy where the select board had announced they were going to appoint someone to serve until next March, I felt it important that the office be elected. And so I circulated a petition, many of you here signed, to require that the office be filled by election rather than appointment of the select board. And that's part of my values are that in a democracy, our leaders should be elected, not appointed. They should be responsible to the voters from whence their power comes. They need to be accountable at all times, and we need to have an informed electorate, and we can't have that the way the town is operating now.
Thank you. Jackie?
Yes, I decided to run I got a call too, and then I said, well, I started to think about it. And I think that my skill set really matches the job. I've been involved in public education for 28 years, and I've been retired since 2020. But my public education experience, for 21 years of those 28, I was in a leadership position. So I have had a vast amount of experience with dealing with budget development and oversight. I think my last budget at BRSU was $32 million, so I know how to do that. I have had incredible amount of experience working with boards. Prior to consolidation, I had 12 boards at the time and 54 board members. And then we went through the consolidation process, which was something that taught me so much, and I think has a lot of parallels to this work, because it was a situation that required incredible amounts of attention given to conversations with the public and input from the public to really get a sense of what are their values and how are we going to build something new that represents and is respectful of everybody. So that was an experience I went through and led DeConnick and Green through. So I feel like, you know, that really, really positions me well to deal with a community that has all kinds of challenges and conflict, but also has really strong beliefs in who they are and great values. And how can I work to move us to an even better place? How can I be part of a team to do that? And I have always worked collaboratively with my teammates. I've never been someone to work alone and be the big boss. So that's why I'm doing it. This is always going to happen, isn't it, Doug?
Wes?
I've decided to run. I actually put my name in. There was a guy who resigned, I think, during COVID with the last name Nebraska. So this is kind of the second time I've gotten out there for this. For me, it's just having a voice in this community. I grew up here. I care about the town. And like I said before, I'd like to see more people in our generation doing the same thing and engaging and just feeling like they do have a voice. I feel privileged to be on this panel with these three people because they're clearly more qualified to have this job than I am. Jackie's vast education experience in the system in the state she was my 6th grade teacher, you know. And Mike and Sean both clearly know the ins and outs of the legal system, and that's something that I know a little about, but not as much as them. I did run a business in Manchester. I'm still running a restaurant now out of our house, but we ran a successful restaurant for 7 years in Manchester, and I ran a paint business for about 8 years here before that. I feel like because of those two businesses, I really have engaged in a different, just people from different walks of life, from different demographics, and I have a way to connect to whoever they are, you know, as long as they show respect and they're cool people. I like to chat, and my wife can tell you that I like to maybe chat too much. But because of that, I think that I can listen to people and hopefully relay what their concerns are to this board. I think the current board has done a great job, like I said before. I'm not trying to make waves in the current select board or disrupt anything, but I think there's a lot to learn, and hopefully my input would be valuable to the people that are there currently. So that's why I'm running.
Thank you. I think that's probably a really good segue to, I'd like to ask each one of you what you consider to be the biggest issues that the town is facing currently. Obviously, just because something is a big issue does not mean that the select board has the ability to do something about it. So I'd like you to keep that in mind as we're addressing the issues of the town. So let's see, I started on this end once, I started on that end once. So Jackie, why don't you start with this one?
Oh, thank you so much. I think, you know, I've been watching the conversations around the revising the town plan and the visioning work. And it seems to be pretty much hands down that the community is feeling that the biggest issues are affordable housing, which is no surprise. That's a big issue in the whole country, and economic vitality for our community. So I think those are the two of the biggest issues, and they probably have been issues, you know, for decades. I mean, and they, at different points, they peak. I think housing affordability has probably always been a pretty significant issue in this community. But I think it's worse now, and it's harder for middle-class folks to establish themselves in this community. So that's a big deal. And I also think that economic vitality, you know, when I moved here with my husband, that was the boom of the outlets, and that time has gone. So now what do? How do we reinvent ourselves? To, you know, is it smaller businesses? If so, if you're on the select board, how can you help? Are there some you can promote some maybe changes to zoning that promote that? You know, I don't know the answers to those things yet because I have a lot to learn. I'll be honest with you, I have a lot to learn about all of that. But I think that those are probably our two biggest issues facing our community right now.
Thank you, Mike.
I would say the biggest issue, and I come at this maybe because, but I'm influenced at least by the fact that I studied political science in college. And I think the problem is we don't have accountability of the current select board. And I can point you to two examples of that. One is the Property Tax Relief Reserve Fund, which according to the audit shows that it's owed $224,000 from other funds in this town, which means someone has authorized taking that money from its duly designated purpose and the income that went with it and using it for something else. When the Property Tax Relief Reserve Fund was established, it was clear that any withdrawals from that account required the approval of the voters. That hasn't happened. The second would be, another example is the Fire Equipment Reserve Fund. According to page 53 of the town report, that had a balance of $165,147, but it was adjusted for income and withdrawals, which changed it to $257,965. And then the investment committee report came up with yet a third number, which was $474,008. The town audit says there's $313,147. So there's 4 different totals. If you look at it, there's a difference of $308,860, and there's no explanation for that. That's one fund. There's other funds, if you look at them.
I think that's time, Mike. Thank you, though.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll come back to more questions along those natures. Sean, if you can.
Sure. So what's the biggest issue facing us, I believe was the question, in my opinion. I think it's one of identity. What do we want to be? Who are we going to be? Jackie touched on it earlier. You know, we used to be something else. Things change, and things are changing here too. That includes affordable housing. That includes small businesses. That includes what we do with our budget, which the select board oversees and creates. And if you were listening or happened to attend the Economic Development Forum at BBA that went on over 3 different sessions, a lot of ideas were thrown around, and some of them are pretty out there, where you would say, we're not going to do that here. But there were also some really good ideas and new ideas. And Manchester, like a lot of towns, is going to have to decide, what do we want to be, and how are we going to be that? We can't be everything for everyone, but we're a really good community. And the more we respectfully share ideas and develop an identity and pursue it and decide that that's what we want to be and that's how we're going to do things, the better off we're all going to be. And I think we all realize what we were in the 80s, 90s, even 2000 isn't here anymore. And so to me, the biggest issue that we face is figuring out what our identity is and then creating a plan and executing it.
Thank you. Wes, you're up.
I think the biggest issue in this town, at least since I've been back here, which has been about 13 years, is the housing situation that we're dealing with now. Obviously, that's not something that the select board can necessarily solve, you know, but there's ideas that we could implement to at least address the problem. I know there's a lot of resistance for certain ideas about this stuff, but it's something that we have to do. I mean, there's a whole demographic of people that live in this town that are barely hanging on, and there's another demographic of people that work kind of jobs in this town that have to travel from somewhere else because they just can't afford to live here. And that's the reality, you know? So I think that's the biggest single issue that our town is facing right now. I know, Paige, you said that there's certain issues that maybe aren't addressed by the select board, but I think there's some social issues in this town that could be dealt with also. As a business owner in Manchester for the past 13 years, I would say promoting new local business is something that is lacking and something that we could try harder to do. Just like the residential real estate prices, the commercial real estate in this town is now crazier than it's ever been. We're in a situation where we've been looking for a new space and it's almost unattainable. So if there's ways to provide relief for new business in this town and encourage people to take a risk and do that, you know, I think that's something we should be conscious of and focus on. So, thank you.
Wes, it's like you knew what my next question was going to be. That's a little creepy. It's a perfect segue, because my question was, What approach can the select board take to updating rules and regulations to help attract new businesses to town? So, Mike, how about if I start with you on that one?
I can't think of any off the top of my head that need to be changed. I think the process is important in going through the development of the plan, and from that plan, you can then decide what regulations need to be changed as a result of that. Because we're still in that first phase of developing the plan, I think it's premature to say, eliminate this review or do something different. There is a way of going about zoning regulations, and it's not easy, and I don't think it should be easy when you talk about interfering with people's property rights. So I think we have to respect the process and wait and see what comes out the other side.
Okay, thank you. Sean?
I think, number one, the select board should meet with current businesses in town and ask them, what worked for you? What didn't work for you? Even talk to businesses who are no longer in business, and why is that? It's almost like an exit interview when you're leaving a job. Tell us about all of the good things that worked for you, and now tell us about all the things that didn't work for you, and why are you leaving? Was it zoning? Was it something else the town did? Was it a bigger economic factor that you had nothing that you could control over? There's any number of things you could do, and I think it starts with a forum of small businesses that have been in town, that are in town, that can tell anyone who asks, here's what works for me, here's what doesn't work for me, and here's what I'd really like to see. And I think that would really drive the town in how they think about things going forward and perhaps attracting new folks.
Thank you. Wes?
Yeah, I think agreeing with what Sean just said, engagement for these local businesses with the select board would be a huge thing. I mean, the years that I've run businesses in town, I never even thought about that being an option, you know. But if there was a system in place where we could have some kind of meeting once a year or twice a year and just get the concerns from these local businesses about what's the hardest thing for you in terms of dealing with the town, and how can we make this easier. I know some businesses in town that have had real hard times with zoning stuff, and some of that stuff can be frustrating. I mean, there's some kind of old zoning bylaws in our town that are maybe could be updated, you know. But I also think taking a look at the structure of this town and trying to figure out new spaces to utilize, we see a lot of vacant real estate in downtown Manchester right now. And you have a lot of people that want to work, you know, and there has to be a way to figure those two things out. I'm not sure if there's any way or any money in the town budget to incentivize new people or take some of those properties to create these things, but you look at just visually what's happening in the town, and you have all this space, and you have opportunities for people to work, and, you know, it would be encouraging, I think, for a lot of younger people to say, hey, we want to help you, and we want to promote new business in this town. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Jackie, please.
Yeah, very similar thoughts to what Sean mentioned and what Wes have mentioned. I mean, this would be a new area of learning for me, and I can't imagine trying to make decisions about what should or shouldn't change or what leverage might I try to use to change things without knowing more. So one of the things I had thought about when I was thinking about if I were lucky enough to get this work, I'd want to talk to my fellow select board and say, you know, it might be great if we set up a system where a couple of times a year we have a business roundtable and we access those people so they can inform us and we really know what's going on. What are the barriers? What's working for you? What isn't working for you? You know, and it's not just business. I've thought about that. Like we have our population is aging in Manchester. What are some of the issues that elderly folks are dealing with? So again, I'm just saying it's kind of my nature that I need to know a lot more before I start to think about what's the policy that we can develop or the supports that we can give until we have more information.
Again, a little bit prescient here. I'm going to be asking you to kind of delve a little bit into speculative fiction here, so bear with me. The tourism economy in Manchester has been evolving over the past few years, right? Think about the rise of e-commerce and maybe the declining interest in the factory outlets, right? So the question is, in which direction do you see this evolution heading, and how might our town prepare for it? So Wes, you're up on speculative fiction.
Well, yeah, I do think that the retail stuff is kind of turning into a thing of the past. I remember when I was a kid, when Ben Halbin first came here, and that was a massive transformation for this town. And it was great for a while, you know. I think in theory at the time it provided some good things for the town, but at this point in time, it's not anybody's fault that that's happening, but the world's different, right? Nobody really goes shopping so much in a physical place, and you can just buy everything online. So there's a big transition happening there. I just saw that Eddie Bauer closed 2 days ago, and I didn't even realize that they were gone. Like, oh my God, that's a huge space, right? So I think if going into the future, I would say if you look at just the businesses that have opened in Manchester over the past, let's say 4 or 5 years, there's certainly a bigger focus on food, which for me is really cool to see because there's some really great restaurants in Manchester now. Even in just the past year, how many new restaurants have opened in town versus the town population. So that's clearly a direction that we're going. One idea I've heard in the past, I think there's one in Waitsfield or something, it's like a small business incubator where you take a existing space and you have, let's say you have a cheese cave and you have a small brewery system, you have a commercial kitchen, and then maybe like a co-packing facility. So young people can go in there, try an idea out, do it for a month and see if it works. And if it's super great, people show up and then they can take the idea from there. But that's one thing that we could focus on. I do think that food stuff in terms of tourism is where we're heading. Perhaps, you know, fishing stuff via Orvis, like just visiting, getting outside, things like that. But I do think the retail stuff is maybe heading out in a way.
Jackie?
Yeah, I don't have, you know, it is our whole country is changing, the world is changing, and so what's going to get folks to keep wanting to come here? And we've always done a fabulous job of really capitalizing on our beauty and the recreation. So it's important that we always keep that in the forefront. But I think we just need smaller spaces, you know. I think I'd want to have a conversation maybe with some of the select board members or business folks in Woodstock, Vermont, you know. I mean, you visit Woodstock and they have very small shops. But I always viewed Woodstock as pretty similar to us, except they didn't have, of course, they didn't have the outlet craze that we had, so we have to make a transition. But how did they do that? I mean, it's very vibrant there, and it's a lot of small-owned businesses that have a lot of variety. So it's like different, unique things you can get that you don't get online. So how do we do that? How do we, you know, how do we as a select board maybe help with influencing how, you know, smaller, getting some of those huge spaces? It's so expensive. Is there anything we can do to kind of break up some of those huge spaces and provide some incentive to provide smaller spaces for small businesses?
Thank you. Mike?
Could you repeat the question again?
Yes, the question is, in which direction do you see the evolution of our tourism economy heading, and how might we as a town prepare for it best?
Okay. I think what we have to recognize is the town doesn't necessarily affect these big changes by changes it makes. The market sometimes imposes itself on us. And in the case of the retail developments, there was nothing in our town plan, there was nothing in our zoning bylaws that made this particularly attractive as a retail haven. Yet, that's what it became. So there was more response to that after it was already here but we're not necessarily going to turn the way people want to invest their money by a town plan that we enact or zoning bylaws that we enact. That being said, there are cases, and one comes to mind to me, where the town itself can take action that affects a problem. And that would be the Richville Road situation, where we had a tentative agreement in November, and that sounded good on all sides, that we would get some housing out of it, big issue in town. But, you know, we had 60 days when it was supposed to be completed, I think, and now we're more like 120 days down the road. So there are things that the town can do with the land it owns, and there's things that town can do to enact regulations limiting things, but the initiative is going to come from the private sector, I believe.
Thank you. Sean?
So when I think about tourism in our area, I think it's thriving, and I don't think that's going to change. I think the focus of the select board should be on its full-time residents, who need to acknowledge that tourism drives a lot of our local economy, and they're very important to us. Tourism evolves just like everything else does, but being a realtor and knowing people from where I used to live who choose to come here to spend their free time, I think we're doing great. And what Vermont has done as a whole, and our area too, has become a four-season destination, excluding mud season, where people want to be here and they want to spend time. They're filling our restaurants, they're hitting our mountains, they're in town spending their money, and we're getting those tax dollars. So to me, I'm not worried about tourism. I'm more worried about our full-time folks and how we can have things that support them more so than I am with the tourists.
Great, thank you. We're going to switch gears a little bit, but it is not quite a non sequitur. So this election is coming at a special time, with Manchester updating the town plan through the Vision Manchester initiative. So Sean, I'm going to start with you. What are your main takeaways from these community forums, and how would you, as a select board member, utilize the feedback?
My main takeaway is something I touched on earlier, which is, holy smokes, how are we going to get folks to agree on things? It's really important. And there are ideas all over the map, and we just have to acknowledge we are a relatively small town. We are going to have to find some common ground and settle on a plan that works. It's like a mediation. You're probably not going to get everything you wanted, but are you going to get enough to make you happy? You just can't please everyone, and that's my main takeaway, and that's the feedback I got when I went around getting signatures to run for this position was, well, good luck with that. I don't accept that. Like, we respect each other as neighbors. We have a lot of common values. There is a way forward for this town and a town plan that will work, but we just have to acknowledge we can't have everything that everyone wants, and that has been my primary takeaway.
Great. I don't remember which direction I was going, so Mike, we'll just go to you next.
Okay. I pretty much agree with Sean. I think we're at the shopping list phase of the development here, and the Planning Commission has a lot of work to narrow those things down to what the plan is actually going to be, and then they'll present it to the select board.
So the question also is, how would you, in this position, utilize feedback that has been received through the workshops as well?
Well, I will certainly be following what the Planning Commission does in that process, and be interested to see how they deal with those issues.
Okay, great. Jackie?
I think I mentioned in an earlier response, from what I've seen, it seems like the big issues facing our community as a result of this process have been housing affordability and economic vitality. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out, what do the recommendations say after all of this is said and done. And then I think it will be up to the select board, you take a look at that. Where can we play a part in that? If these are the recommendations, are there things here that we could do that are pragmatic, that are reasonable as far as any cost? And, are there some things we can do to maybe help with housing? What can we do? I don't know. I don't know the answers yet. It'll be interesting to see what comes out in the recommendations. It is complex, of course. In any situation like this, everybody is not going to be happy. But I think it's a great conversation to be had. And what may end up happening too, I would think, and again, if I were in those shoes and you see those recommendations, it's hard to know what's going to come out of that. It may be like, oh, but we need to know more about this, and back to that. Let's talk to the business people a little bit more. Let's get some special groups in that we can have some conversations with that can maybe inform our work a little more in the future.
Wes?
Could you repeat the question again?
Yes, the question is, through the Vision Manchester initiative, we've been going through this town plan. What are your main takeaways from the community forums, and how would you, as a select board member, utilize the feedback?
In terms of the community forums, what are we talking about? Like,
Well, there was the one that was on housing, there was one on economic development.
Okay.
So I mean, the feedback that had been, I guess, given through the forums.
and this
then-
is given from people that live in Manchester.
Yes, everyone who was attending those were
Attending those
Manchester
meetings.
residents, yes.
I mean, clearly, I don't know a lot about what you're talking about right now. And that probably speaks to this whole engagement thing that I was talking about earlier. And I think whatever ideas come out of those forums definitely need to be relayed to the select board and taken seriously. And hopefully we can get a lot of people commenting in these forums.
Okay. Jackie, I'm going to start with you for this question. So as a select board member, how would you seek feedback from residents?
Well, as a select board member, the key word is member. So I'm a select board operates as a whole, as one entity. It's not an individual. I'm not an individual person that's going to make any promises or do anything on my own. So you work as a team. So I would just have a conversation with my select board members as to, is there something we should look into together? How might we further engage our public around this conversation? So that would be the approach I would take. And also, of course, your town manager is your CEO for the community. And I would always, you don't operate outside of working with Scott, too. So I think that it's something that you do together, and I wouldn't approach it as an individual.
Okay. Wes, let's go to you, and then we'll go around to Sean.
Okay. Can you repeat that question one more time?
Yes, as a select board member, how would you seek feedback from town residents?
I think the best way you could seek feedback from town residents is just to get out there and talk to them. I'm in a position now where I deliver food to Discount Beverage every day. So I'm at the liquor store every day, which is a pretty popular spot in Manchester because it's the only liquor store in town. And I see a lot of different people and all different ages. And I think, honestly, as a select board member, it would be as easy as having a conversation with as many people as you can to say, what do you think about what's going on in this town? And what do you want me to say for you? A lot of people are just scared to use their own voice, or just, you think about daily life. We all have so many things going on, and a lot of people are very stressed out about a lot of things that are going on in their lives. To etch out a little bit of time to say, oh, I should go talk to the select board members, like, maybe that's not even going to happen. But if there was a way that we could get out there and approach people more, I think there would be nothing to lose from that, So.
Okay. Sean, you want to take that one next?
Sure. So I'll share a little anecdote. My teenage daughters hate going anywhere with me because I talk a lot. So, and that's the best way to find out is to ask. You just talk to people. It's very simple. Hey, how are you? How long have you been in business? What's working for you? What isn't working for you? How long have you lived in Manchester? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? It's not complicated, but you have to do it. And you have to get out there, and you have to do things and be involved in your community. My wife and I take walks most every day around town. We do the loop, we call it, around a lot of the local shops, and we see people regularly, and we have conversations. And it's like anything. If you're in a relationship and you want to know how it's going, ask your partner. Don't assume anything. So to me, feedback as a select board member is the same as feedback as an employee, as an employer, as someone in a relationship. You have to talk about things and ask questions.
Great, thank you. Mike?
Yeah, I think personal contact is important. Just circulating 2 petitions in connection with this election made me acutely aware of that, if I wasn't already. But I also think we need to do things to encourage people to come to select board meetings when issues are being discussed. And I've observed, and the chairman has even repeated recently, that his favorite part of the meeting is public comment. So people just out of the blue coming to talk about whatever they want to talk about is important, and we should encourage that.
Fantastic. Again, it's like you knew the question I was going to ask next, because my question is, how do we build greater civic engagement? And I am one of those people who does like going to select board meetings, and when I go, there are very few other people around. And how do we encourage the community, or maybe how does the select board encourage the community to get more involved with what it is doing? And Mike, I'm going to start with you on that one.
Okay, I think a lot of it has to do with attitude and how those comments are received. I think town meeting could be much more effective in turning out more people if we put some of the controversial questions on the town meeting agenda. Frank Bryan, who's now a retired professor at UVM, said the greatest predictor of attendance at a town meeting is how many controversial articles are on the agenda. And I think we have tended to stay with the safe things on the public agenda and keep the select board control on other things. And we need to be prepared to let the people speak.
Okay. I think I'm going to switch directions. So Sean, we'll go to you and then around to Wes.
Turn off Facebook. That's it. I think too many people are comfortable at home on their phones as keyboard warriors and think that that is that's their civic duty or engagement, and I wholly disagree with that. It may spark a conversation, but to be truly engaged with our civic process here in town, you need to be out in public talking to people face to face. So how do we do that as a select board or as a town? I think a little more awareness about what's going on would be helpful and hopefully drive a little more participation. I don't know if any of you have been to a select board meeting, but they are sparsely attended. And so I have 2 things to say to that. The first one is, that's fine. The second one I would say is, well, then don't come complaining later because you didn't participate. You know, we're one of 5, we're running to be one of 5, and that's a tough position. And I think they're doing their best. And so if someone else wants to hop on their keyboard and complain about something, my question to them is, well, where were you?
Fair? Wes?
Yeah, I think like we're all saying, it's just getting, I think, the whole select board out into public more would be great. I would probably estimate that there's a few people in Manchester that don't even know who's on the select board currently, you know? So maybe having some public events, like we have these street fairs every year, maybe have the select board out there just engaging with people on the street, saying, hey, here we are, get to know me. And again, just encouraging people that, like, you know, you can be heard, you can come to any meeting you want. Frankly, a lot of the select board meetings can be a little boring because that's just the nature of what you're dealing with. But for maybe the more controversial topics that are affecting this town that people are passionate about, say, tonight's the night, we're gonna be talking about this. And if you wanna say something, come in, or even Zoom it, you can watch it on TV, right? It's out there all the time. But, you know, maybe using the Manchester Select Board Facebook page to promote the Select Board as opposed to engaging with anybody on Facebook, but say, hey, this is what we're doing tonight, and just try to, you know, make people know that there's a meeting every week and anybody can come.
Thank you. Jackie?
Couple ideas, and I think I mentioned it earlier, that whole, you know, the roundtable idea. So paying attention as a select board, what are some of the, and it'll come out of this visioning work, what are some of the things that really surfaced? And might it be great to, okay, we're going to invite all high school kids. We're going to run a little roundtable for you next Saturday, 10 in the morning. We'll have coffee. We'll have coffee. They're old enough for coffee. Coffee and donuts. And just come and talk to us about what it's like to be a teenager in Manchester and what's working for you and what isn't. So I think just having those conversations and inviting people in, it helps with your visibility as a public servant, and it also shows that you really care about what these folks have to say. And again, back to, you know, I see some elderly folks. I know we have neighbor to neighbor and some elderly folks, but, you know, maybe we go in to, you know, work with neighbor to neighbor and say, hey, can we have we just want to have, you know, a time that we can come in and talk to some folks and get a sense of, are there things we could do differently? What are some of the barriers for you in this community? So again, kind of enjoyable conversations, getting to know our neighbors a little bit better. And I just think that might be a great approach. You know, I used to, as a principal, run a coffee, a little coffee thing in the morning on Friday mornings. And sometimes I'd only get 2 people to come in, but I'd learn a lot from just those 2 people. So it's just having that openness that, you know, come in and have a conversation with us.
Great, thank you. I'm going to, I think, Wes, come back over to you. And the next question I have is, select board members all live, work, and participate in the community beyond possible role in town governance. So how would you plan to handle recusals, disclosures, ethical safeguards, when there is perhaps even just the perception that professional interests might intersect with public responsibilities?
Well, I mean, I am a business owner in Manchester. So, you know, I think that you just have to be aware of these things when you're engaging with the public. But, yeah, you know, we did a lot of work with the food shelf during COVID. And that was a place where, as a business owner, was shocked to see just how many people were going there and how much bigger that got during COVID. And then now I think there's the lines out the door every Wednesday, you know. So I'm a food business owner in town, but I feel like that's something that I can engage with as a select board and not have a second thought about it, you know. So, yeah.
Okay. Jackie?
I really, as I said, I've been retired for 6 years, so I don't really see any conflict of interest potential for me. I am currently the president of the North Shore Day School, but we have term limits there, and my term is up in September, and our last meeting for the year is on May 30th. So we do get a town appropriation, but that will be, if I were to be on the board, I won't have, my work there will be done. So I don't really see that, you know, currently as a retired person that I have any potential conflicts.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
I likewise am retired, but I do recognize that I do have conflicts on lots of things from time to time, and it's a question of, a lot of times, studying the agenda to know what the topics are that are coming up, so you don't get halfway through the item and find out suddenly that you do have a conflict. But it's something you always have to be aware of, and I think you should err on the side of declaring a conflict if you, as you said, there's an appearance of a conflict. So that's how I would deal with it.
Okay, thank you. Sean?
Similarly, so one of the things I think about with this role is that we would be viewed as a fiduciary to our residents, and that they are our first priority, not whatever our priority is. And so one of the things I did in a former career was, as a corporate attorney, was train folks on board participation and conflicts of interest. And so the number one thing we would always say is disclose. If you think you have a conflict, even if it may not be a real conflict, it could be perceived as one. It's not worth that risk, and disclose it. And then talk to your fellow select board members to make a determination. One of the former justices had said sunlight is the best disinfectant. I agree. Put it out there and let folks decide. And if it's a questionable thing, err on the side of caution.
Okay, thank you. All right, this one is a little bit, the question was a little muddy submitted, so I'm going to do my best to translate it. And Jackie, we'll start with you if you don't mind.
Thank you for the muddy question.
Yeah, I apologize for that, but I'm trying to think,
No
like,
time
well, I
to
haven't
think
started
about
with
it.
you in a while, so, yeah, okay. So what do you see as the role of the select board in the management of the town? In other words, how involved should the select board be? Deeply involved or hands-off? Or is it somewhere in between? So if you can kind of maybe...
Sure. Well, when we transitioned, when we consolidated under Act 64 and we became Taconic and Green District, I also worked with the new board to become a policy governance board. So, and I've trained other boards in policy governance. So I'm a believer in that there are clear roles and responsibilities in any organization for it to function well. So we have a CEO, we have a town manager, and they are responsible for the day-to-day operations of our town. And we are responsible for developing policy that drives their work. So that's what the job of the select board is. So I have pretty clear idea in my head of how that operates. So if somebody, you know, and again, this happened in my previous career, if someone shows up at a meeting and they have a problem with transportation or there's an issue with the bus or something, I always was my first question, did you talk to, you know, did you talk to the principal? Have you gone through that process? Because I'm not going to weigh in on that. And so the CEO has their job, and then you as a board member, your job is to develop that policy that drives how you're going to behave and how you're going to make decisions. Thanks.
Thank you. Mike?
You have to study the policy governance to really understand the extent of it, so I'm not going to comment on that, but I do believe that there is accountability of the select board to the voters. I think that's my primary point. I don't believe, I agree with what Jackie said about it's the job of the board to develop policy and the job of the administration to carry out that policy. It seems if you were to sample recent select board meetings, the primary topic is, are we going to make an exception to the policy for you on this particular case? And that seems to me to be inconsistent with the role of setting policy and asking the administration to carry it out.
Thank you. Sean?
So I would encourage everyone to look up the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. It does a really nice job laying out the role of the select board. Maybe the person who asked is just looking to learn more, and that's great. The select board doesn't do everything, as other folks have already talked about. We've got ordinances, we've got policies, we've got our local roads and bridges, the town budget, liquor licenses, things like that, and kind of the overseer, as Jackie touched on, of the other folks who are full-time employees. So it's a very useful resource for folks. I would encourage people to take a look at it. You know, we have nothing to do with the taxes that come from Montpelier, for example, on schools. It's a unique role and one that is limited by statute, and I don't want to bore you all, but in reality, that's the answer. It's limited by statute, and we function as one cog in the wheel that keeps this town going.
Okay, thank you. Wes?
Yeah, I mean, I think agreeing with pretty much everybody on this about the difference between the town manager and the select board is, you know, the town manager is in a paid position that is managing this town, and the select board is a position that's unpaid that we get voted in. You know, clearly you work together on a lot of issues, but at the end of the day, they're two separate jobs. Not to say that you can't get along and, you know, deal with each other the way you should, but yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. Kind of backtracking a little bit to something that came up earlier. So I'm going to, wherever else, Wes, we'll start with you this time. Okay. How do you think Manchester can meet the moment in working towards solving the affordability crisis? And what role can an individual as a select board member play?
I mean, there's lots of different ways that we could approach the housing crisis. I think the ideas that have come up in the past, over the past few years, of utilizing these different pieces of property, whether it was on Richville Road or up by the airport, you know, we have to find a place to make this work, right? At one point, there was an idea about setting up an apartment complex kind of behind the J. Crew outlets, which it seemed insane to me as a resident of this town just because of the place. So I think you have to get creative and figure out what can the town do in terms of finance to find one of these places, and then, you know, how can we agree on a location for that spot? What was the second half of that question?
What role can an individual as a select board member play in
Well,
that?
as an individual, I think it's just about bringing a creative idea to the board, but at the end of the day, it's a board, and you have to all agree on the same idea. So, you know, I think that's where you have to get creative and think about things that maybe have not been thought about before, but at the end of the day, you all have to work together, right? So that's it, yeah.
Jackie?
Could you read that again?
Sure. How do you think Manchester can meet the moment in working towards solving the affordability crisis, and what role can an individual play as a select board member?
I think it's a little, I don't know, I just personally feel it's premature for me to answer that in any responsible way. I paid attention to some of the ideas that came out around the housing as far as the visioning process, and there looked like some fabulous ideas as far as, you know, using some of the space to create some apartments, so that mix of apartments and then smaller, more affordable homes. And I think those are all, they look like they might help make a dent in some of our issues. But again, I feel like I would need to look at that and have conversations with my fellow board members to talk about what is pragmatic for us, what can we do as a board, what's, you know, responsible to the rest of our taxpayers, what role can we play? So that's really all I can offer on that right now. I'll need to know more.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
There's something very direct that the select board can do, and that would be to work on a governance charter for the town. We currently send over $500,000 a year of our 1% sales tax. We don't send it to Montpelier. They collect it for us and keep over $500,000 a year. That could directly reduce our property taxes. Burlington and Rutland do it. Other towns have the authority to do it, choose not to. We need to have a charter so that we have the authority to do that. It's not raising any new taxes, it's taking the one that we already have and keeping all the proceeds in town.
Thank you. Sean?
We're not to refute anything that anyone else has said, is that right?
You can speak to yourself in such a way that might demonstrate you have a difference of opinion.
I don't know that amending, you would have to amend our charter, and that's not an easy thing to do. I'll leave that at that. As for, to answer the question about affordable housing and the crisis and how do we meet the moment, that is not an easy question to answer on a local or state or national level. One of the things I would turn around and ask people who actually live here now, are you glad you live here? I mean, who's complaining about affordable housing? Is it people who want to live here, or is it people who are saying, I can't live here anymore? And so I think that's one distinction we have to be clear about. What can the select board do? They can look at zoning regulations. They can look at where can people have housing. Can they change the zoning to allow for apartments, for example? But one of the things I think the select board needs to be very careful about is where they do that. Because if you change something, there are going to be other people who have lived there previously who took possession with one understanding of the zoning that they lived in. And when you go and change things around and suddenly you have neighbors you didn't anticipate or you didn't think would be residential, there's always a cause and effect to things. And the other thing I would caution is, because I did read about planned building in a flood zone, and I think the select board needs to be extremely careful in conversations about new ideas and new places, because doing it in the wrong place could have a horrendous impact on everyone and would cost people more money. Thanks.
So I'm going to have a follow-up on this one, and this one, I apologize, I feel like is putting a target on people with this question, but it is submitted, so I'm going to ask it. What is your stance on short-term rentals? Is this something that should be regulated? So sorry, Wes, I'm starting with you.
Are we talking about like Airbnb type of stuff, short-term rentals?
Short-term rentals, yeah.
Well, I think that has certainly negatively affected our community in terms of the housing thing directly. You know, especially if you're a second homeowner and you have an Airbnb and you come up here for a month of the year and, you know, all of a sudden you're driven your property value up by maybe 30%, you know, and you're never here and you have people coming in and out. In theory, they're spending money in our community and, you know, positively affecting the town. But, yeah, it's an interesting question. In a lot of ways, it's great to draw more people in, but it's really affecting the housing market in, I think, a negative way. So, you know, I'm not sure how the select board could put limits on these short-term rentals. I know there is some stuff in place for second homeowners. I think there's a difference in the tax that they pay. But you've seen in certain towns across America where they've kind of outlawed that also. And I'm not sure if that's the right approach. You know, we do want to promote people to come here, but it can be out of control sometimes also, you know. So it's certainly something that we should be conscious of and see how it is maybe negatively affecting our community.
I'm going to loop this around, and Sean, take that to you.
Yes, they should be regulated. I'm not against them, but they should be regulated, and there are a number of ways to do that, and some towns and cities in Vermont already do it. There are a number of reasons why that should be done. One is it would generate income here. Two is you have some oversight as to what's being done or used in that particular short-term rental. For example, if it's a 3-bedroom house with a septic system designed for that house and you're letting, there's no oversight and 20 people are staying there, you're gonna have a problem. And so there should be regulation with short-term rentals. I'm not saying there shouldn't be short-term rentals. I think they are a valuable resource for our community. They bring in a lot of tourism. And yes, Wes, I agree, they do also limit supply for local buyers. But they also provide resources for us in the form of tax and local economy, but they should be regulated.
Mike?
They are regulated in Manchester, we just don't enforce it.
Full answer?
Beg your pardon?
I say, is that your full answer?
That's my answer.
Okay. Jackie?
I think there should be some type of regulation. I want more data first. I want to know, I just want to know how big the issue really is in Manchester. How many properties do we have that currently are rented out as Airbnbs, and what's the frequency and turnover in those Airbnbs? I would need some more data before I could make any responsible recommendation on how that should shift. So I do know that some communities have put in, you know, a 30-day rental length, like you have to rent for 30 days, there's nothing allowed under that. Maybe that makes sense here. Again, I'm not really sure until I see some more data on what the real issue is. So that would be the first step. But I think that we probably should take a look at that to see if it really is a problem that we think it is.
Okay, thank you. Last question before we open it up to the floor is, what can the town do to support more small and local businesses? And Mike, we'll start with you on this one.
I think we've already started, several people have commented about it, the change in the businesses in Manchester in the last 10 years or so has been towards more local stores as opposed to national outlets. And I think, again, that's a market force that's operating. I don't know that we have to do anything more to encourage that. I think we do have the market factor of very high rentals for businesses, as Wes mentioned. And I think that, you know, we may be working our way out of that by the not elimination, but by the natural selection of national chains not choosing to be here anymore. That kind of set a high bar and pulled everyone up with it. And so I think that's changing. And the question is, how long are individual owners going to tolerate having empty spaces? That's what's really going to determine it.
Jackie?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what we can do as a select board to solve that issue. Short of, you know, is there some type of pilot program we can maybe support in some small, again, responsible financial way that has a, you know, is it a pop-up thing on small businesses that give people a chance to try their thing and offer some incentives on that, or give them a space to do that. So I don't really know, but until we can get these giant, huge square footage spaces, businesses, no one's going to rent that anymore. So we've got to get, you know, there has to be smaller space available that's affordable for people, and I'm not sure what role the select board can play in that, but again, that is a conversation that's being had through the visioning, and they had some ideas on that. So again, look at what, you know, I'd want to look at what some of the folks that are closer to it, what are they saying, and is there something we could grab?
Thank you. Wes?
Yeah, I mean, kind of expanding on what Jackie was saying, I think that in terms of the role of the select board in promoting new local business, there's only so much that you can do. Again, the commercial real estate in this town now has reached a new plateau that I've never seen before. Like, I think the cheapest place that we looked at in the past couple of months tapped out at like $675. And I would say the majority of those spaces were all over $1 million, if not well over $2 million. So as a local small business owner coming to Manchester and thinking about starting from the ground up, I mean, it's super scary, right? Where do you go? But I do think like seeing these empty vacant lots across the town that are just so big and owned by a lot of them outside real estate management companies that are not even in Vermont, like, how do you get into that space? You do need to subdivide them. You need smaller spaces. You brought up Woodstock, Vermont earlier. Like, that is a place you go to and you see smaller sizes and a lot of just local businesses, which is awesome to see. I think that like the pop-up thing's a great idea. The food incubator idea that I brought up earlier, just small business incubator. The question is that a responsibility of the select board? And does the town have enough money to even try to do something like that? I don't know. I don't think so, you know?
Sean?
So I think the select board can do something to help promote more small businesses in town. It's having conversations. It's putting together forums. We touched on it earlier about talking to small businesses that are here currently, what worked for them, what didn't work for them. I think one thing that people don't realize is there's always a flip side to something, and we talk about how high the rent prices are. Well, let's talk to the landlords. Let's talk to those building owners. Let's put a proposal out there to them and say, well, have you thought about this? Hey, instead of having that thing sit empty and you pay taxes on it, what if we put this idea out there? It could be anything. It could be you get an equity stake in the business. I think all it takes is some creativity, some ideas, and the select board, while they may not have direct responsibility for something like that, they can spearhead it. They can put the idea out there. They can create a gathering where folks can come together, owners of vacant lots or buildings, and people who want to have a business, put them down and facilitate a conversation. You know, it could be a fireside chat where the select board member is the moderator, and you just throw ideas out there and you see what comes out. But I don't think the answer is the select board can't really do anything. I think the select board can always do something to facilitate a conversation that might lead somewhere for a potential small business owner or someone who's sitting on a vacant building, paying taxes and getting nothing back.
Thank you very much. I'm going to switch over now to allow people to ask questions from the audience. I will let you know all the questions that were posted that I asked today were questions that were posted on the library website. So we will be having another meeting again on the 21st. If you have questions that don't get asked today that you would like to have addressed, please submit them on the form. If you want to encourage your neighbors to get more involved with local politics and civics, then please encourage them to submit questions so that we can have more questions that can be asked on the 21st. And I will also remind anyone that if you are interested in asking a question, please wait until Doug comes at you with the microphone, because otherwise, nothing that you said will be able to be heard on the live stream. So, and Doug, make sure that the handheld is unmuted.
Hello, thank you for being here this afternoon. So my question is, in your opinion, what defines and contributes to a town's economic vitality? And then I have a follow-up to that.
So the town's economic fatality?
Vitality.
Vitality. Wow, okay. I was a little concerned, Victoria, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little concerned there. Is that
Paige,
directed?
you know me. It can be to anyone.
Okay. Is there anybody who wants to start off?
I'll take it. I think it goes back to something I touched on earlier, which is who do we want to be? And I think the more collectively we understand what it is we want to be, it helps define a vision, and then you follow that path to hopefully an economy that's functioning and not fatalistic, but vital.
Thank you.
To our collective success. And it's an understanding of we are a community, and we have to try to help each other and work together while still adhering, and this is where the select board has to look at those policies and ordinances and statutes and make sure they're doing so within the confines of what they're restricted by.
Does anyone else want to chime in, or should I ask my second part?
I'll try that. I think we tend to think about economic vitality in terms of businesses, new businesses opening, lots of activity going on in town, but I think vitality can be measured amongst the residents of the town in different ways. And I think we tend to overlook that. I think community organizations that exist generally in this town seem to be struggling. And safe to say that in another 10 or 20 years, many of them will no longer exist. And that would be a sad thing. And so I think there's many levels of vitality that you can consider.
So Mike, you touched on, like, he has a habit of doing this, Paige, because he's segueing to the second part of my question is, and Sean, this isn't really fair, so if you want to chime in, where do nonprofits and substance use rates, including DUI rates, play into Manchester's vitality?
I don't have the statistics on what those are. So that's, I don't know how to answer that question without the statistics. And I'd have to have not just the current ones, but where were they before to measure that. So I don't know how to answer that question.
So I've heard of a lot today. We can skip the substance use rates, but they're in the YRBS, as Jackie may remember. But let's go back to the nonprofit contribution to Manchester.
How do nonprofits contribute to Manchester?
Right, because I've heard from all of you today, business, independent businesses, national businesses, but I have not heard where nonprofits fit in.
Well, I would just say that I think nonprofits are an invaluable part of any community and need to be considered and have a voice.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
I think Don Keelan has documented very well in some of his columns that Vermont is amongst the leaders in the number of nonprofits per capita. And I would dare say that Manchester may be a leader in Vermont in that area. And so I think nonprofits play a huge part in the vitality of this community. And I think it's something that maybe they need to spend more time promoting themselves because it doesn't appear that anyone else is going to
Yeah, Victoria, and
do
I'll
it
just,
for them.
yeah, and Victoria, I'll add, I mean, I think the same thing. I think that that folks in our community do not have any idea the role that nonprofits play in supporting folks in our community. And I sure found out when I was a principal at MEMS, and I started to get to know who my kids were. And when I realized that, 40% of my kids were in households of poverty, and what kind of nonprofits do we access to wrap around them? So I think that we don't see a lot of that. And unless you're connected to it, unless you're, I spearhead the Interfaith Holiday Project the last few years. And so I see firsthand who needs some support and what families are challenged. And so our nonprofits just do a tremendous amount of wraparound for our community. And I think it would be instructive to, again, I'm back to that roundtable idea, instructive to have some of your nonprofit leaders kind of give us a clue of like, what's going on? Where are our weak points? And, let's be aware of that.
Multiple questions over here on this side. Let's hit Steve, because I think he had his hand up the first round.
I have a question for Jackie. We had fun at the Quality, though, didn't we? In your announcement, you said there were no issues and you had no access to grind. Does that mean a vote for you is a vote for status quo, or are there any issues where you feel you would differ from the current direction of the select board?
Well, I think anybody that's worked with me, Steve, professionally, you know, probably not the quality, I was, you know, still, but I'm never have been a status quo person. So I am always, I think, the sign of a healthy organization is an organization that's responding to the needs of its community. So you should always be changing. So no, I mean, I'm a listener. What do we need? How can we grow? You know, in my wheelhouse is kind of the, I've led strategic planning. I have, you know, done a lot of training with folks. I listen to what they need and then build from there. So, no, I mean, you know, that's just not who I am. So, yep.
Bob, I think I saw Bob's hand up before.
Uncharacteristically, I have a real softball question for all four people. While we were sitting here, I used your Wi-Fi to do a quick Google search on houses, single-family houses for sale in Manchester, under $500,000. I found none, not one house. However, if I was to have found one house under $500,000, the mortgage on that would be $36,000 a year you'd have to pay, including property taxes, which means you would need, if we do the 1 to 4 rule, you would need to have an annual income of $144,000 to buy the house that actually doesn't exist here. So isn't really the problem for affordability is that Vermonters, not only in Manchester, but in Vermont and possibly in the rest of the country, is that the workers are not getting paid enough? Yes or no?
Yeah, depending on the job, absolutely. I think that the people that we found out were essential during COVID, I mean, I know for a fact there was an 80-year-old woman working at Shaw's getting paid $13 an hour, right? You know Ginny. We all know Ginny. She's probably almost 80, and she's still in there working every day. So, yeah, they need more money, and they need benefits beyond just the money. You can't tell them they can only work 35 hours a week and get no health insurance, you know, like. But again, is that the role of the select board to determine? I don't know, but I think that rates for everybody could go up in that demographic for sure.
Should we just go down the line then?
Same that he said.
I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Really, I mean, yeah. I mean, but it's the same in the whole country, you know? I mean, it's just, it's unaffordable. There's really rich and there's people that are really struggling and there's hardly anybody in between anymore. I mean, the gap is getting wider and wider and wider. So it's a huge issue.
Yeah, I think that's one way of focusing on it. Another way is to look at why our price is so high in Manchester. And it's part of that is because we are an attractive tourist area and people want to have a second home here. So if we look at the number of homes there are in Vermont, it would indicate that we would have many more residents in Manchester than we actually have. So it's the residents who are working in the places who can't afford, who are competing with second home owners or with short-term rental owners to buy that housing. That makes our situation in Manchester, I think, worse than in many other areas. And it's also something that frankly has been in place since Mary Lincoln's time.
So I would say two things, Mr. Standard. One is I've never met anyone who didn't think they should be paid more. And two is I think we should be careful that folks think the select board would have anything to do with what someone gets paid at their job, because the select board just doesn't.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sean. Good point.
Carol.
I'm confused.
Basically, first of all, I think I'm surprised nobody hit on it. If we don't get the schools in a better situation, no one's going to come here or move here anyway. Vermont used to be ranked in the top 10 for the country. I think now we're ranked 36 and maybe lower. So I think you better take a lot of things into consideration, but also most of the things you talked about can't be controlled by the select board. That's what the state is putting into, and their referendums on different things. So I think everyone has to be really realistic about what we're talking about.
So is there a question that you want to ask to the candidates for that? No, okay, thank you. Right behind you, Doug. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Sorry. I'm not going to be able to stand, sorry. And I have a question regarding conflicts of interest. And I know that a couple people have mentioned certain things about it. I had been a realtor for many, many, many years and very successful. And I always thought select board people, regarding the power they have, and even if it's 20%, if it's one person, and there is no wrongdoing, that is just a conflict of interest to be a realtor and to have a power that controls values of properties, where properties can be built. So I ask everybody that, but specifically, I have to ask Sean, because he not only is running for the select board, he is a realtor, and he has realtor ties.
I don't know if you're familiar with the previous person who stepped down, Greg Cutler. He's a realtor. Okay. So there is no prohibition on that. To the extent, so I'm not sure what my conflict is, but to the extent there was one, which we talked about earlier, would be recusal. So that there was no, whether it's a real or perceived conflict, I would step out of that. So just for the folks who can't hear, her follow-up was, I'm talking about appearance, and my answer to you is yes. I would declare a conflict of interest and step out of that. But to be clear, there is no prohibition on a realtor being on the select board. And I would argue that it adds a lot more value with knowing what folks are looking for in homes and understanding the local market than any potential conflict of interest that may not exist.
Of course.
Yes. I totally understand what you're saying. I'm just saying the power of the value of a particular property, sellers and buyers. I just know that the appearance of it, because I never was wanting to get into government, but just the appearance of it would keep me out of it.
So can you explain to folks how the select board sets a value of a particular property?
Many different things. It could be septic, the amount of the septic that it can hold. It could be the amount of land that's needed for a particular property. It can be roadways. It can be, things can shift that affect properties and individuals. I worked with my clients were the sellers. If I had contracts, they were my clients, and you could just see whatever the select board was doing. And of course, I'm not going to go up to the select board and say, "Well, change that," because my seller wants this. However, you're in both, and for me, that's a conflict.
Okay, well, I think Sean has already addressed that, and that should there be a conflict, he would certainly recuse himself from any conversation or vote. Are there any other questions in the room? In the back, thank you.
So energy affects both our pockets as individuals, as businesses. Energy sources affect the environment. And I'm wondering whether you see a role for the select board in exploring ways collectively, both for residents and for businesses, where we could find more energy sources that had less impact on the environment, but also collectively could also lower those costs for all of us. Something for the board to explore, not to impose upon us, is my question.
Is that an open question, Rabbi? Yes. Okay. Does anybody want to take that one?
I'll take it. So I agree, and I don't know if you watch any of the select board meetings, but a month or two ago, someone came to the open mic portion, I'll call it, and presented on solar energy for a public comment section, and just asking the select board to consider and think about those things. So absolutely, and it does happen.
And the most recent meeting, there was discussion about solar collectors on the town office building and a couple of proposals to choose between. So very specifically to town-owned properties, that's something we can do. I think we're fairly neutral as to placement on a residence or in a business on a rooftop. It gets controversial when you're talking about an industrial scale energy producer. And that, as select board members, we have to rely upon what our zoning provides, I think.
Jackie or Wes, do you want to address that? No? Okay. Next question, Steve?
If I may comment on that, I'm sure you all got a bill from Green Mountain Power recently that they wanted to increase by 7.5% your electric bill. I sent a letter to the PUC, and I did get a positive response. And I think a lot of what energy we're going through the electric companies is the price, of Green Mountain Power. I mean, we're encouraged to go electric, but yet we're also encouraged to pay higher money. And I think there is, right now in Montpelier, some discussion of the ethical ability of PUC. There's problems. So, two, we have our chair of the environmental committee here. He can elaborate more, I think, for us.
Is there a question, Steve? Okay. Commentary, gotcha. Any other questions?
Thank you. I was still writing the question, but I think I was running out of time. I just had a couple of comments. I've spent a lot of time the last year going to a lot of different town meetings, trying to understand the dynamics of town, how it functions, how it doesn't function. But and generally, I find all the board participants to be working in earnest, trying to make this a better place to live. With that in mind, the economics of affordability operate pretty firmly inside of a normal supply-demand market. I find affordability to be a buzzword that we all want to rail against. It's not going back. So maybe an adjustment's needed in a different way. I think we can also agree the only thing worse than some of the steep inflationary cycles we've seen in the last 5 years would be a deflationary cycle. To Sean's point, you can't, as a select board, change wage growth or restrictions. So that's pretty much up to the open market. But as a select board member, would you be more in favor of something you could do, which is encourage growth or growth through some sort of organic change? Or would you have a heavier footprint on trying to manipulate an open market to one direction or the other? Thanks.
Any takers?
I'll dive in. I don't think you can manipulate the open market, for starters. I think one of the things as a select board member you can and should do is try to figure out which direction things are headed on a macro level, and then figure out how does that apply to our town. Growth, yes, the select board can be a part of growth. We've talked about it a number of times already. Is it small business forums where you get together and talk about things, including in those conversations people who own these commercial buildings. It's conversation, it's participation, it's looking out more broadly and then applying it here. That's how I think about that.
I don't think we're going to build our way out of this problem. I think we're a small town, and I think we should remain a small town. There will be growth, and I think that will be organic. I think the whole purpose of having zoning regulations is to ensure that the growth that occurs happens in a way that is conducive to what we want to be as a town. And I don't see a role of the select board beyond that.
Carl.
I agree that the select board cannot control the bigger economic forces. But looking at the housing situation, it just seems logical that if a couple of hundred homes in this town are short-term rentals, that means they're off the market. So instead of restricting or eliminating short-term rentals, I'm curious, each of you, would you vote to limit the short-term rental? Limit the number, first of all, and limit the ownership to individual people rather than out-of-state corporations?
So Carl, you want this to go down the line, have an answer from everybody? Who's starting?
I'm happy to start. I mean, again, Carl, I mean, I need to know, you said there's a couple hundred, and so, you know, I haven't seen that data. I don't know, but I want to know exactly what are we looking at before we start to make any responsible decisions around that. And if that is the fact, and we have, you know, that's a huge number. And we should, I think, take that seriously. And I would look to other places that have tried to put some regulation in place and what's worked and what are the consequences of that. So I wouldn't take any of that lightly. So I'm not going to tell you, yeah, I think we should limit this and we should limit to this amount. But should we take a look at it? Absolutely.
I think the Housing Task Force has collected a lot of information about short-term rentals, and the Planning Commission as well. This is a case where sometimes something that appears to be beneficial isn't always. The Stratton Corporation solved their housing problem for their employees by buying 3 motels in town. And that only put more pressure on the short-term rental market because those people who were coming to Manchester and staying there still want to come. And so they're going to be staying in either other hotels that we have here or more likely in short-term rentals. So I think you have to look at every step that's taken very carefully, and we got to be careful that we don't end up like what's happened in Montpelier, where in recent years we've put $1 billion into housing, but we've ended up with fewer housing units available and paid over $500,000 per unit for those units of so-called affordable housing that were created.
I don't think you're going to like my answer, but it depends. I don't think it's a binary yes/no. I think a lot of other factors would have to be considered as part of it, but I would tell you that I would be open to considering a way to limit short-term rentals in our area. But I think that if they're not working, then things are going to become available. We talked about this with the gentleman in the back about supply and demand. If there's still a demand, folks are coming here. That's not necessarily a bad thing that I would want to turn off. You also asked about limiting how they're purchased, like not under a corporation name from out of state. My understanding is that if you're buying real estate in Vermont, that the LLC would have to be registered in the state of Vermont as well. And I would not say no to that, because a lot of folks who are buying investment properties do want something in an LLC. It protects them personally. So I would not say no to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike mentioned this earlier about there is some kind of regulation to Manchester now, but it's not enforced, right? That's a big question. Like, you could put these limitations in, but then how do you go about enforcing them? Like, who's to say somebody's still not going to come here and have 2 Airbnbs on their property? Is it the duty of the select board now to go through every property in town and try and figure out where that's happening, and then what happens? I do think there's some negative effects from these Airbnbs on our community, but again, like, people are going to continue to come here, right? And it's just a hard thing it goes both ways, I think. I mean, it's great to have more places for people to stay, especially with some of these motels being bought and not utilized. But, you know, if it's a person that lives on the other side of the country that comes here once a year that has a place that they rent out for a lot of money, is that right for the town? I don't know. But, yeah, I think we could do something, you know.
I think we have time for one more question, so up in front.
I'm just wondering, to Ann Lemke's point, is concerning the conflict of interest and short-term rentals. Is that an example of where you'd recuse yourself, given being a realtor, and a potential conflict of interest with regulating short-term rentals?
So I don't own any short-term rentals. I don't have any clients that do, so I don't perceive that to be one.
Okay.
It's certainly something I could raise to the chair, but I wouldn't perceive that to be a conflict of interest any more than your Jackie's son.
I think that's a great note to end on, actually. So I think we'll call it for today. Again, just a reminder that we will have a round 2, completely different questions on Thursday evening, May 21st from 6 to 8 p.m. Please do make sure you submit some questions on the library website, or encourage your neighbors to participate in the civics of our society, of our town, and submit questions. Thank you.
Oh, God.
Thank you to the candidates.
About that, Jackie. Hung in there. It's a long haul. I'm starving. I haven't eaten any food all day. Hey, Dave. Nice to see you, man. How are you?
All right, all microphones are off. You're safe.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, I got there.
Oh. By every person who grabbed it.
The client who